In the golden cradle of Western civilization, ancient Athens, a boy was born who would shape the mind of the world. His name was Plato. Around 428 BCE, in a city bursting with art, politics, war, and ideas, a child from a noble and powerful family took his first breath. His bloodline was steeped in politics and pride, his ancestors among the founders of Athens. Plato, whose birth name may have been Aristocles, was destined for public life. But fate had another plan. He grew up amid the rhythms of a city that celebrated freedom yet condemned truth-tellers. He was taught poetry, music, wrestling, and philosophy, the very fabric of a classical education. His nickname, Plato, meaning broad, likely referred to his wide shoulders, but it would one day stand for the vastness of his mind. And then he met Socrates, the barefoot philosopher who asked unsettling questions and taught with nothing but dialogue. Socrates didn't teach answers. He taught how to ask the right questions. Plato was captivated. For years, Plato followed Socrates through the streets of Athens, watching him confront generals, artists, politicians, and shoemakers, asking what justice meant, what courage was, and whether one could live a good life without virtue. But in 399 BCE, tragedy struck. Socrates was sentenced to death by the very democracy he served. The crime? Corrupting the youth and questioning the gods. Plato, heartbroken and disillusioned, watched his mentor die, executed not with sword or fire, but with a cup of hemlock. This moment would forever haunt him. From that day on, Plato turned his back on politics and turned toward philosophy. He knew that Athens, great as it was, had failed Socrates, and he vowed to ask the questions others feared. He began to write, not with emotion, but with depth. He brought Socrates back to life in dialogue after dialogue, using his mentor's voice to explore virtue, love, justice, and the soul. These were not just books. They were acts of resistance, acts of memory, acts of hope. In search of wisdom beyond Athens, Plato traveled to Egypt, where he studied sacred mathematics, to Italy, where he encountered Pythagorean thinkers, and to Sicily, where he attempted to train a tyrant into a philosopher king. It was a noble failure. Plato was imprisoned, sold into slavery, and eventually ransomed by a friend. But setbacks did not silence him. He returned to Athens with a new mission, to build a place where minds could grow and truth could be pursued for its own sake. And so, around 387 BCE, he founded the Academy, the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. It wasn't just a school, it was a sanctuary of the soul. Students came to study astronomy, mathematics, politics, ethics, and the greatest of arts, dialectic, the conversation of minds. Among these students was a young man named Aristotle, who would soon light his own flame of genius. Plato believed the world we see is not the true world. The real world, he said, is beyond the senses. It is a world of forms, perfect, eternal, unchanging ideals. A circle, a tree, a just act. All these things in our world are merely shadows of the true form that exists beyond. Reality is created by the mind. We can change our reality by changing our mind. Plato, to explain this, he told the most famous metaphor in philosophy, the allegory of the cave. Imagine people, chained inside a dark cave, seeing only shadows flickering on a wall. They believe these shadows are reality. One person escapes, sees the light of the real world, and realizes the truth. But when he returns to free the others, they mock him. Some even wish him dead. To Plato, we are all prisoners in the cave of ignorance. Only philosophy can lead us into the light. In his masterpiece, The Republic, Plato described a just society ruled not by wealth or power, but by wisdom. He called for philosopher kings, leaders who loved truth more than status. The city, he said, must be divided by nature. Rulers, guided by reason. Guardians, led by spirit. Producers, driven by appetite. Each class had its role. Justice, for Plato, was each person doing what they were meant to do. But Plato did not stop with idealism. In his later years, he grew more pragmatic. In works like the Laws, he tried to design a real city-state with laws, rituals, and education that could elevate imperfect humans toward virtue. He continued teaching at the academy, writing dialogues, full of beauty, logic, and spiritual insight. Some were deeply metaphysical, like Timaeus, which explored the origin of the cosmos. Others were personal and poetic, like Phaedo, which described the immortality of the soul and the final moments of Socrates. Plato's ideas became the foundation of Platonism, a worldview that has echoed through the halls of Christianity, Islam, Renaissance humanism, and modern philosophy. Augustine quoted him. Aquinas built on him. Even modern thinkers like Nietzsche and Jung wrestled with him. The soul takes nothing with her to the next world, but her education and her culture. Plato, around 348 BCE, after more than 8 decades of thought, dialogue, and teaching, Plato passed away in Athens. Some say he died writing, pen in hand. Others say he died peacefully in his sleep. His body was buried near the academy. His soul, if he was right, ascended to the world of forms, but he left behind something immortal: his dialogues, his vision, his method. He taught us that wisdom begins with wonder, that true knowledge is recollection, and that justice is not just in the laws, but in the harmony of the soul. Today, across continents and centuries, in classrooms and conversations, Plato still speaks. He whispers in the minds of students. He challenges the assumptions of rulers. He calls each of us to leave the cave, seek the light, and live according to reason. Plato was not just a philosopher. He was a bridge, from ignorance to understanding, from illusion to reality, from Athens to eternity. The greatest wealth is to live content with little. And so ends the story of the man who dreamed, not just of a better world, but of a better soul.